The dust settled on her worn boots as Patricia Nichols stood at the edge of Abilene, Texas, clutching everything she owned in a single cloth bundle, her heart pounding with equal parts terror and determination as she watched the sun climb over the horizon on that spring morning in 1878. She had walked away from the boarding house where she had worked for 3 years, leaving behind nothing but bad memories and the ghost of who she used to be. The proprietor had made his intentions clear the night before, his whiskey-soaked breath hot against her face as he cornered her in the kitchen, and she knew if she stayed another day, she would lose more than just her dignity. So she left with the dawn, taking only what she could carry and a hope so fragile it felt like it might shatter with the next gust of wind. The streets were mostly empty at this early hour, just a few ranch hands stumbling out of saloons and a shopkeeper sweeping his front step. Patricia walked with purpose, even though she had no destination, her blonde hair tucked beneath a faded bonnet, her dress patched in so many places it was hard to tell what the original fabric had been. She was 22 years old and felt ancient. Her parents had died of fever when she was 17, leaving her orphaned in a town where women without family had few choices. She had chosen honest work, even when it meant scrubbing floors until her hands bled and serving meals to men who looked at her like she was part of the menu. Now she was choosing something else. Freedom, maybe, or at least the chance at it. She made it to the edge of town where the buildings gave way to open prairie, and that was where she stopped, suddenly overwhelmed by the vastness of it all. The sky stretched forever in every direction, and she had no horse, no wagon, no plan, just hope, just the stubborn belief that anything was better than going back. That was when she heard the sound of hooves behind her. Patricia turned to see a man on a bay horse, leading a pack horse loaded with supplies. He was tall in the saddle, wearing a dusty brown hat and a vest over a work shirt, his face weathered by sun and wind in a way that suggested he spent more time outdoors than in. He pulled his horse to a stop a respectful distance away, and she noticed his eyes first, dark and serious, taking in her situation with an understanding that made her throat tight. "Morning, miss," he said, his voice low and steady. "You waiting for someone?" Patricia lifted her chin, trying to look less desperate than she felt. "No, sir. Just deciding which direction to walk." He studied her for a long moment, and she felt exposed under that gaze, like he could see right through her brave words to the fear underneath. Then he glanced at her small bundle, at her worn boots, at the way she stood like she was ready to bolt at any moment. "You running from something or toward something?" he asked. She did not know how to answer that honestly, so she said, "Does it matter? Might." He shifted in his saddle, leather creaking. "Name's Isaac Owens. I have a ranch about 15 miles north of here. Been in town picking up supplies." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "My ranch has room for one more if you are looking for honest work and a safe place to be." Patricia stared at him, trying to read his intentions. She had learned to be wary of men who offered help, especially to women in desperate situations. But there was something different about Isaac Owens. He did not look at her the way the boarding house owner had, with that hungry, predatory gleam. He looked at her like she was a person, like her answer actually mattered to him. "What kind of work?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "Cooking, mostly. Some cleaning. I have 3 ranch hands who are tired of eating their own terrible attempts at food. The job comes with a room in the main house, separate and private with a lock on the door. Wages are fair, paid monthly. You would eat what we eat, and if it does not work out for any reason, I will bring you back to town or wherever else you want to go, no questions asked." It sounded too good to be true, which made Patricia suspicious. Why would you offer this to a stranger? Isaac looked away for a moment out at the prairie, and something flickered across his face. Sadness, maybe, or memory. My sister left home 5 years ago because she did not feel safe there. I have not seen her since. I spent a long time wishing someone had offered her a safe place to land. He looked back at Patricia. I cannot change what happened to her, but I can offer you the same thing I wish someone had offered her. The sincerity in his voice made Patricia's eyes sting. She blinked hard, refusing to cry in front of this stranger, but something inside her loosened. She had been braced for cruelty or indifference or worse, and his simple kindness caught her off guard. "I am a hard worker," she said quietly. "I do not cause trouble and I do not steal." "I believe you." Isaac reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a canteen, holding it out to her. "It is a long ride. You look like you could use some water before we start." Patricia took the canteen with shaking hands and drank deeply, the cool water soothing her parched throat. She had not realized how thirsty she was until that moment. When she handed it back, their fingers brushed briefly, and she felt the roughness of his calluses, the evidence of hard physical labor. "Thank you," she said. "For the water and for the offer, I accept." Something that might have been relief crossed Isaac's face. He dismounted and moved to the pack horse, rearranging some supplies to make room. "You can ride behind me or on the pack horse. Your choice." "The pack horse, if it is all right. I do not want to be any trouble." "It is no trouble either way." He helped her secure her small bundle to the pack horse and then gave her a boost up onto the animal's back. His hands were respectful, touching her only as much as necessary to help her mount, and she appreciated that more than she could say. They rode north out of Abilene as the sun climbed higher in the sky, turning the prairie grass gold. Patricia had never been this far from town before, and the openness of the landscape both frightened and exhilarated her. Isaac rode slightly ahead, not pushing a fast pace, occasionally pointing out landmarks or warning her about a rough patch of ground. He did not press her with questions about her past, or make small talk to fill the silence. Instead, he seemed comfortable with the quiet, and gradually Patricia found herself relaxing into the rhythm of the horse's gait. After about 2 hours, Isaac pulled up next to a creek lined with cottonwood trees. "We should rest the horses and have something to eat," he said, dismounting and helping her down. He unpacked some bread and dried meat from his supplies, sharing it evenly between them. They sat on rocks near the creek, and Patricia realized she was ravenous. She tried to eat slowly to maintain some dignity, but Isaac just smiled slightly and pushed more food toward her. "You do not have to be polite about it. Eat your fill. We have plenty." So she did, and the food settled warm and solid in her stomach, making her feel more human than she had in days. As they ate, Isaac told her about the ranch. He had inherited it from his father 3 years ago when both his parents died in a wagon accident. It was not a huge operation, just enough cattle and horses to make a modest living, but he was proud of what he had built. His 3 ranch hands were all good men, he assured her, and he would make it clear that she was to be treated with respect. "If any of them step out of line, you tell me immediately," Isaac said, his voice firm. "I mean that. Your safety is not negotiable." Patricia nodded, moved by his protectiveness. "Why are you not married?" she asked, then immediately wished she could take the question back. It was too personal, too forward, but Isaac did not seem offended. He just looked at the creek, watching the water flow over smooth stones. "I was engaged once. Her name was Margaret. She died of cholera 4 years ago, right before the wedding." His voice was matter-of-fact, but Patricia heard the old pain underneath. "I have not had much interest in courting since then. The ranch keeps me busy enough." "I am sorry," Patricia said softly. "That must have been terrible." It was, but life keeps going whether you are ready for it or not. He stood, brushing crumbs from his pants. We should keep moving. We are about halfway there. The rest of the ride passed in comfortable silence. Patricia found herself sneaking glances at Isaac, trying to figure him out. He was probably around 27 or 28, she guessed, with the kind of quiet strength that came from facing hardship and surviving it. His profile was handsome in a rugged way, all strong lines and serious expression, but it was his kindness that really struck her. In her experience, powerful men rarely used their power to help people weaker than themselves. Yet here was Isaac Owens, offering sanctuary to a stranger because of what had happened to his sister. When the ranch finally came into view in the late afternoon, Patricia felt something like hope bloom in her chest. It was a modest spread, as Isaac had said, with a sturdy 2-story house, a barn, a corral, and several outbuildings. The land rolled gently in all directions, dotted with cattle grazing peacefully. Smoke curled from the house's chimney, and as they rode closer, 3 men emerged from the barn to greet them. Isaac introduced her to his ranch hands. William, a grizzled man in his 50s with a gray beard; Tommy, a cheerful young man barely out of his teens; and Joe, a quiet Mexican man in his 30s who tipped his hat politely. All 3 looked surprised to see a woman, but when Isaac explained she was their new cook, the surprise turned to obvious relief. "Thank God," William said fervently. "I cannot eat another one of Tommy's burnt biscuits without losing my mind." "My biscuits are not that bad," Tommy protested, but he was grinning. Isaac showed Patricia to her room, which was on the 2nd floor of the main house, at the opposite end of the hallway from his own room. It was simple but clean, with a bed, a dresser, a small table, and a window that looked out over the prairie. True to his word, there was a sturdy lock on the door. Patricia set down her bundle and turned to find Isaac watching her from the doorway. "Will this work?" he asked. "It is perfect," she said, and meant it. She had not had a room of her own since her parents died. At the boarding house, she had shared a cramped attic space with 2 other women. "Good. Take some time to settle in. Dinner is not expected tonight since you just arrived. Tomorrow you can start figuring out the kitchen and what supplies we have. If you need anything at all, my room is down the hall. Do not hesitate to ask." After he left, Patricia sat on the bed and let out a long, shaky breath. She had done it. She had walked away from one life and landed, improbably, in something that might actually be better. She did not know what would happen next, did not know if this would work out or if Isaac Owens was truly as good as he seemed. But for the first time in years, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she had a chance at something more than mere survival. That night, she lay in her comfortable bed and listened to the sounds of the ranch settling around her. Horses nickering in the barn, the wind rustling through the grass, the creak of the house itself, and somewhere down the hall, the quiet movements of Isaac preparing for bed. She fell asleep with her hand resting on the locked door, feeling safer than she had in longer than she could remember. The next morning, Patricia woke before dawn, a habit from her years at the boarding house. She dressed quickly in her patched dress and made her way downstairs to the kitchen. It was a good-sized room with a large cast-iron stove, a sturdy table, and shelves lined with supplies. She found flour, lard, eggs from the chickens she had seen scratching around outside, and began to make biscuits. By the time the men started stirring, she had biscuits in the oven, bacon frying, and coffee brewing. Isaac was the first to appear, looking surprised to find her already hard at work. "You did not have to start this early," he said, but there was appreciation in his eyes. "I am used to it," Patricia replied. "Besides, I wanted to prove I meant what I said about being a hard worker. When breakfast was ready and the four men sat down at the table, the praise was immediate and enthusiastic. William declared her biscuits the best he had ever tasted. Tommy ate 4 helpings of everything. Even quiet Joe smiled and nodded his approval. Isaac said little, but Patricia noticed he ate everything on his plate and came back for seconds, which felt like its own form of compliment. After breakfast, the men went out to work, and Patricia spent the day familiarizing herself with the kitchen, taking stock of supplies and planning meals. Isaac came in around midday to check on her and found her making a list. "I will need to go into town for some supplies eventually," she said. "You have the basics, but I could do more with vegetables and a few spices." "Make a list and I will take you in a few days," Isaac said. "Or if you prefer, I can go alone and you can stay here." Patricia considered. She was not eager to go back to Abilene, not yet. "Would it be all right if you went without me this time? I would feel more comfortable staying here and getting settled." "Of course." He paused, then added, "You are doing a great job, Patricia. The men are already happier and I am eating better than I have in months. Thank you for taking a chance on this place." The use of her first name and the sincerity in his voice made her flush with pleasure. "Thank you for offering me the chance," she said softly. Over the next few weeks, Patricia settled into the rhythm of ranch life. She woke early to make breakfast, packed lunches for the men to take out to the range, cooked hearty dinners, and kept the house clean. It was hard work, but it was honest and she felt valued. The ranch hands treated her with respect, and Isaac was unfailingly kind and considerate. She found herself watching him more and more as the days passed. The way he moved with easy confidence, the way he was patient with the animals, the way he treated everyone fairly, from his hired hands to the horses to her. She noticed how his face softened when he smiled, which was not often but always genuine. She noticed the way he rolled up his sleeves when he worked, revealing strong forearms tanned dark by the sun. And she noticed the way he looked at her sometimes, when he thought she was not paying attention. There was something in those looks that made her heart beat faster, something warm and wondering that she was afraid to name. One evening about a month after her arrival, a storm rolled in suddenly. Patricia was just finishing up the dinner dishes when the first crack of thunder shook the house. She flinched hard, the dish in her hands clattering into the sink. She had always hated storms ever since she was a child. Isaac appeared in the kitchen doorway. "You all right?" "Fine," she said quickly, but another boom of thunder made her jump again. He crossed the room to stand beside her. "You are afraid of storms." It was not a question. "I know it is silly," Patricia said, trying to laugh it off. "I am a grown woman. Thunder cannot hurt me. Fear is not always rational." Isaac moved to the window, looking out at the darkness lit by periodic flashes of lightning. "When I was a boy, I was terrified of the dark. My father used to make fun of me for it, told me to toughen up. But my mother would sit with me until I fell asleep. She never made me feel weak for being scared." Patricia was touched that he would share something so personal. "What made you stop being afraid?" "I did not exactly. I just got better at managing it, and I learned that sometimes having someone with you makes hard things easier to bear." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "You do not have to face things alone anymore, Patricia. Not here." Before she could respond, a particularly loud crack of thunder made her cry out and stumble backward. Isaac caught her automatically, his hands steady on her arms, and suddenly they were very close. Patricia could feel the warmth of his body, smell the clean scent of soap and leather. Her heart was racing, but she was not sure anymore if it was from the storm or from his proximity. "Sorry," she whispered. "I did not mean to. Do not apologize." His voice was rough. His hands were still on her arms, and he did not seem in any hurry to let go. Patricia, I need to tell you something. She looked up at him, barely breathing. What? These past weeks with you here they have been good, better than good. I find myself looking forward to coming in from work just to see you. I find myself making excuses to check on you during the day. And I know this might be inappropriate, given that you work for me and you have only been here a short time, but I cannot keep pretending I do not feel what I feel. Patricia's heart was hammering so hard she was sure he must be able to hear it. What do you feel? Isaac's hand slid from her arms to gently cup her face. I am falling for you. Maybe I have been since the moment I saw you standing at the edge of town, trying so hard to be brave. I do not want to make you uncomfortable and I will never pressure you, but I needed you to know, you are not just my employee. You are so much more than that to me. Tears sprang to Patricia's eyes, but for once they were happy tears. I feel it too, she whispered. I have been trying not to, because I was afraid it was not real or that I was just grateful for your kindness. But it is more than that. I care about you, Isaac. I care about you so much it frightens me. You do not have to be frightened, not of this, not of me. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, wiping away a tear. Can I kiss you? She nodded, unable to speak, and then his lips were on hers, gentle and questioning. Patricia kissed him back, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, feeling his heart beating as hard as her own. The kiss deepened, becoming more certain, and Patricia felt something inside her unfurl like a flower opening to the sun. This was what she had been hoping for without knowing it. This sense of rightness, of coming home to a person instead of a place. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. I have been wanting to do that for weeks. I wish you had done it sooner, Patricia said, and felt him smile against her skin. They stayed like that for a long moment, just holding each other while the storm raged outside. Eventually, Isaac led her to the sitting room where they sat together on the couch, her tucked against his side, his arm around her shoulders. They talked for hours, sharing stories about their pasts, their hopes for the future, all the small details that people in love want to know about each other. Patricia learned that Isaac loved to read but rarely had time for it, that his favorite season was autumn, that he had a scar on his left shoulder from being thrown from a horse when he was 15, that he wanted children someday but had given up on that dream after Margaret died. Isaac learned that Patricia had wanted to be a teacher before her parents died, that she loved music even though she could not play an instrument, that she had a fear of deep water because she nearly drowned in a river as a child, that she had felt invisible for so long, she had almost forgotten what it was like to be truly seen by another person. I see you, Isaac said fiercely, pulling her closer. I see how strong you are, how brave. I see how you make this house feel like a home. I see all of you, Patricia, and I am amazed by what I see. She kissed him again for that, long and sweet. And when they finally went to their separate rooms near midnight, Patricia felt like she was walking on air. She lay in bed touching her lips, replaying every moment, unable to stop smiling. The next morning, the ranch hands noticed immediately that something had changed. William raised his eyebrows at the way Isaac and Patricia smiled at each other. Tommy grinned knowingly. Joe just nodded as if confirming something he had suspected all along. About time, boss, William said, making Isaac flush slightly and Patricia laugh. Over the following months, their relationship deepened. Isaac courted her properly, even though she lived in his house. He brought her wildflowers from the prairie. He took her on rides to beautiful spots on the ranch where they could watch the sunset together. He taught her to handle a horse better. She taught him to dance in the kitchen after dinner, humming the tunes since they had no music. They learned each other's moods and habits. Patricia discovered that Isaac was grumpy first thing in the morning until he had his coffee. Isaac learned that Patricia sang while she cooked, usually old hymns her mother had taught her. They had their first fight when Isaac wanted to buy Patricia new dresses, and she insisted on using her wages to buy them herself. They resolved it by compromising. He could buy her one new dress for special occasions, and she would use her own money for everyday clothes. "You are the most stubborn woman I have ever met," Isaac said, but he was smiling. "You are just realizing that now." Patricia shot back, and he kissed her until they both forgot what they were arguing about. In September, Isaac took her to a barn dance in town. It was Patricia's first time back in Abilene since the day she had left, and she was nervous about seeing people who might have known her from the boarding house. But Isaac kept her close, his hand possessive on her back, and made it clear to everyone that Patricia Nichols was his sweetheart, and anyone who had a problem with that would answer to him. No one had a problem with it. In fact, the townspeople were friendly and welcoming, several women commenting that they had never seen Isaac look so happy. Patricia relaxed and let herself enjoy the evening, dancing with Isaac until her feet hurt and laughing more than she had in years. On the ride home under a sky full of stars, Isaac pulled the wagon over and turned to her. "Patricia, I know we have not been courting for very long, but I am 30 years old and I know my own mind. I have loved before and lost, and I know how rare and precious it is to find what we have. I do not want to waste any more time." Patricia's heart was in her throat. "What are you saying?" Isaac reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring, simple gold with a small diamond. "I am saying I love you. I am saying I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I am saying, will you marry me, Patricia Nichols? Will you let me be your husband and your partner and the father of your children someday? Will you make this ranch our home together?" Tears were streaming down Patricia's face. "Yes," she said through her sobs. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. I love you so much, Isaac. I love you more than I knew it was possible to love another person." He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her deeply, and Patricia thought about how far she had come from that desperate woman standing at the edge of town with nothing but hope. She had been ready to leave with nothing, and Isaac had said his ranch had room for one more. He had given her safety and work and respect. But more than that, he had given her love, the truest and deepest kind, and she knew she would spend the rest of her life being grateful for that spring morning when he had ridden up and offered her a chance. They married in November, a small ceremony in Abilene's church with the ranch hands and some townsfolk in attendance. Patricia wore a beautiful dress that Isaac had insisted on buying for her, pale blue with lace at the collar. Isaac wore his best suit and looked so handsome it made her heart ache. When they said their vows, his voice was steady and sure, hers thick with emotion, and when the preacher pronounced them man and wife, the kiss they shared felt like a promise of forever. The wedding night was tender and wonderful, Isaac patient and loving, showing Patricia what it meant to be cherished by a good man. Afterward, they lay tangled together in his bed, which was now their bed, and talked about their future. "I want at least 4 children, Isaac said, his hand resting on her flat stomach. "Maybe 5. 5, Patricia laughed. "You want me to spend the next decade pregnant? I want a house full of noise and life and love. I want what my parents had before they died. I want to build something that lasts." He kissed her shoulder. "But we can start with one and see how it goes." "That sounds more reasonable," Patricia said, snuggling closer to him. She felt safe and warm and loved, everything she had dreamed of and more. "Thank you for stopping that day. Thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible." "I will always see you," Isaac promised. "For the rest of our lives, I will always see you." Winter came, and Patricia learned to manage the ranch house in the cold months, keeping fires going and making warm meals. She and Isaac grew even closer, learning to work together, to support each other through hard days and celebrate the good ones. In January, Patricia realized her monthly courses had not come, and by February, it was confirmed. She was pregnant with their first child. Isaac was overjoyed, immediately becoming protective and fussy, insisting she rest more and not lift anything heavy. Patricia rolled her eyes at his hovering but secretly loved it, loved being cared for with such devotion. The ranch hands were equally excited, already planning to teach the baby to ride as soon as it was old enough. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the spring and summer. Patricia's belly grew round and Isaac spent his evenings talking to their unborn child, his hands spread across her stomach, telling stories and making promises. In late August of 1879, on a hot afternoon, Patricia went into labor. It was long and difficult, lasting nearly 20 hours. Isaac stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand and wiping her forehead, offering encouragement even when she cursed him for getting her into this situation in the first place. Finally, as the sun was rising on a new day, their son came into the world, red-faced and screaming. "A boy," the midwife said, placing the baby on Patricia's chest. "A healthy baby boy." Patricia looked down at her son, overwhelmed with love and exhaustion. He had Isaac's dark hair and her nose, and he was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Isaac was crying openly, his hand gentle on the baby's tiny head. "We have a son," he said wonderingly. "Patricia, we have a son." They named him James after Isaac's father. James Owens was a good baby, healthy and strong, and he became the center of their world. Isaac was a natural father, patient and loving, getting up in the night to walk with James when he was fussy so Patricia could rest. The ranch hands doted on the baby, taking turns holding him and making ridiculous faces to get him to smile. Life settled into a new rhythm, fuller and richer than before. 2 years later, Patricia gave birth to their second son, Henry. 3 years after that came their first daughter, Clara. And 2 years after Clara came another daughter, Rose. Their house was indeed full of noise and life and love, just as Isaac had wanted. The ranch prospered over the years. Isaac expanded the cattle operation and bought more land. Patricia managed the household with capable efficiency, raising their children with love and discipline in equal measure. The 4 children grew up wild and happy, learning to ride almost before they could walk, helping with ranch chores as soon as they were able. James grew into a serious boy, thoughtful like his father. Henry was the troublemaker, always getting into scrapes and making his mother's hair go gray prematurely. Clara was bold and fearless, determined to do everything her brothers did. Rose was the sweet one, gentle and kind, always bringing home injured animals to nurse back to health. Isaac and Patricia's love never faded or became routine. They still stole kisses in the kitchen. They still took rides together when they could get away. They still talked for hours after the children were in bed, sharing their thoughts and dreams. They weathered hard times together, bad winters and droughts and low cattle prices, but they always faced challenges as a team. When James turned 18, he announced he wanted to go to college and become a lawyer. Patricia was nervous about him leaving, but Isaac encouraged their son, proud that his children would have opportunities he never had. Henry took over more responsibility on the ranch, discovering he had a gift for training horses. Clara shocked everyone by deciding she wanted to be a doctor, unheard of for a woman at the time, but her parents supported her fierce ambition. Rose was still young, just 12, but she loved books and learning, and Patricia suspected she might become the teacher Patricia had once dreamed of being. On their 20th wedding anniversary in November of 1899, Isaac took Patricia back to the spot where he had proposed. They were both 48 years old now, their hair touched with gray, their faces lined by sun and time and laughter. But when they looked at each other, they saw the same people they had been that spring day in 1878, the desperate woman at the edge of town and the cowboy who had offered her hope. "You regret it?" Isaac asked, holding her close. "The life we have built." Patricia looked out over the ranch that had become her home, thought about their children and the years of love and struggle and joy. She thought about how she had been ready to leave Abilene with nothing but hope, and how Isaac had said his ranch had room for one more. She thought about how that simple act of kindness had changed everything. "Not for a single moment," she said fiercely. "You gave me a home when I had none. You gave me love when I felt unlovable. You gave me a family and a purpose and a life beyond my wildest dreams. I would choose you 1,000 times over, Isaac Owens, in this life and the next." He kissed her then, deep and sweet, and Patricia tasted salt and realized they were both crying. Happy tears, grateful tears, the tears of two people who knew exactly how lucky they were to have found each other. "I love you," Isaac whispered against her lips. "From the moment I saw you to my last breath, I will love you." "And I love you," Patricia whispered back. "My cowboy, my hero, my home." They held each other as the sun set over the ranch, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and purple. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying with it the sounds of cattle lowing and horses nickering and, from the house, the distant laughter of their children. It was a good life, a full life, built on a foundation of love and trust and two people who had chosen each other when they both needed it most. Years continued to pass, bringing more changes and blessings. James became a successful lawyer in Dallas, but came home often, eventually bringing a wife named Catherine, who Patricia immediately loved. Henry took over the day-to-day running of the ranch as Isaac slowed down, proving to be a gifted rancher with innovative ideas. Clara did indeed become a doctor, one of the first female physicians in Texas, making her parents burst with pride. Rose became a teacher in Abilene, inspiring students just as she had always been inspired by learning. Grandchildren arrived, filling the ranch house once again with the sound of little feet and laughter. Isaac and Patricia became beloved grandparents, telling stories of the old days and spoiling the little ones terribly. They taught them to ride and to work hard and to treat people with kindness. They told them the story of how they met, about the woman with nothing but hope and the cowboy who said his ranch had room for one more. On a warm evening in the spring of 1912, Isaac and Patricia sat on the porch of the house they had shared for 34 years. They were both in their 60s now, slowed by age but still sharp in mind and spirit. Isaac's hand found Patricia's, their fingers intertwining automatically, a gesture they had performed thousands of times over the decades. "You remember the storm?" Patricia asked suddenly. "The night you first told me you were falling for me," Isaac smiled, his eyes distant with memory. "I remember everything about that night, the way you jumped at the thunder, the way you felt in my arms, the way you looked at me when I kissed you like I had given you something precious. You did give me something precious. You gave me yourself. You gave me this life." Patricia squeezed his hand. "I think about that day sometimes when I stood at the edge of Abilene with nothing but a small bundle and a desperate hope that there was something better out there. I think about how close I came to walking in a different direction, to missing you entirely. It terrifies me, how easily we might never have met." "But we did meet," Isaac said firmly. "You chose to wait just a few minutes longer and I chose to stop and offer help. That is all it took, just those small choices, and they led to everything we have now." "Everything we have now," Patricia repeated softly, looking out at the ranch bathed in the golden light of sunset. She could see Henry working with a young horse in the corral. She could hear Rose's laugh from inside the house where she was helping with dinner. She could see the land they had worked and nurtured for decades, the legacy they would leave to their children and grandchildren. "I would do it all again," Isaac said. "Every hard day, every worry, every struggle. I would do it all again for one more moment with you." Patricia turned to him, tears shining in her eyes. "We have been so blessed, you and I, two broken people who found each other and built something beautiful from our brokenness." "Not broken," Isaac corrected gently. "Just waiting. We were both waiting for the right person to come along and make us whole." They sat together as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, holding hands and remembering. They remembered the early days of uncertainty and hope. They remembered the moment they realized they were in love. They remembered their wedding day, and the births of their children, and all the small, perfect moments that had made up their life together. The ranch had indeed had room for one more that spring day in 1878. But what Isaac had really been offering, what Patricia had really accepted, was so much more than just a place to stay. It was a partnership, a love story, a home built not of wood and nails but of trust and devotion and the choice to see the best in each other every single day. As the moon rose over the prairie, casting silver light across the land, Isaac pulled Patricia close and kissed her temple. She leaned into him, content and grateful, knowing that every hard thing she had endured before meeting him had been worth it to lead her to this moment, to this man, to this life. "Thank you for stopping that day," she whispered, "not for the first time and not for the last." "Thank you for saying yes," Isaac whispered back. "Thank you for taking a chance on a lonely cowboy and his ranch." "Best decision I ever made," Patricia said simply, and felt Isaac smile against her hair. They sat together on the porch long into the night, two souls who had found each other against all odds and built a love that would echo through generations. The wind carried the scent of grass and cattle and home, and in the distance, coyotes sang to the moon. It was a wild place, this Texas prairie, but they had tamed it together, not by breaking its spirit but by learning to live in harmony with its fierce beauty. Their story, which had begun with desperation and hope and a simple offer of kindness, had become something legendary in their family. Their children would tell their children, and those children would tell theirs, about the woman who stood at the edge of town with nothing and the cowboy who gave her everything. About how love can find you in the most unexpected moments. About how one choice, one act of compassion, can change not just one life but many lives, rippling out through time in ways that can never be fully measured. Isaac and Patricia lived many more good years together, surrounded by family and love. When Isaac finally passed peacefully in his sleep at the age of 76, Patricia held his hand and whispered that she would see him again. She lived 3 more years without him, years filled with grandchildren and great-grandchildren, years spent sharing the story of their love with anyone who would listen. When Patricia died at 79, she was buried next to Isaac on the ranch they had built together, under the wide Texas sky they had both loved. Their children stood together at the funeral, united in grief, but also in gratitude for the example their parents had set. They had witnessed a love story for the ages, a partnership built on mutual respect and unwavering devotion, and they carried that lesson with them for the rest of their lives. The ranch stayed in the family for generations, passed down through the years along with the story of how it all began. The story of Patricia Nichols, who left Abilene with nothing but hope, and Isaac Owens, who stopped to offer help and found the love of his life. The story of how sometimes, when you are at your lowest point, when you feel invisible and forgotten, The right person comes along and sees you, really sees you, and offers you not just shelter but a home. And in that home, built on kindness and choice and love, you can build a life more beautiful than anything you ever imagined possible. That was the legacy Isaac and Patricia left behind, not just land and livestock, but proof that love and compassion can transform everything, that one person reaching out to help another can change the course of history, one heart at a time. Their graves stood side by side on the hill overlooking the ranch, two stones marking the resting place of two souls who had been meant to find each other. And on quiet evenings, when the wind blew just right, you could almost hear them still, the cowboy and his wife, laughing together under the stars, their love story complete but never forgotten, echoing through the years as a testament to the power of hope, kindness, and the courage to say yes when someone offers you a chance at something better.